Scott Ramp was documentary. So, there with a documented documentary.
Good.
The way this works.
Came in pretty late.
Yeah.
Are you?
Have their menus sort of packed up on the wall.
Right.
Right. Over there.
Okay.
Kind of do it yourself.
Okay.
I've been doing adjudication for a long time.
Where'd you go to school?
Central Washington University. And that's where I teach now, too.
Yeah, I guess it's a race.
Stayed at home, I guess.
With their
This is some exciting action shots.
Yeah, right.
Should I get 2 eggs to use for those?
Is this your first jazz festival here?
Sure is, yeah. Looking forward to it. It's gonna be awesome.
For you?
Sit here. Make it short, Scott. Here's Chuck.
Hey, Chuck. If they're gonna keep,
You guys order
they can't go
We
with the
have.
best,
Go ahead, order some. There's a
top
tab there.
layer of jazz musicians, because they all want to stay in Chicago. So they would have to go with some younger guys that are not, if they don't care.
The thing that I would want to point out just in general, that the outstanding soloist is the only thing that we do in the way of identifying excellence. Other than, you know, the form and all that, I mean, it does recognize it in a sense, but I think with this, first of all, we're non-competitive, and we're fiercely non-competitive. To preserve the right values. I think the minute you go competitive, you get everybody showing up to win a trophy. And you forget about making music, you forget about listening to each other and paying attention to those things. So, and as a result, we don't get overwhelmed with bands. The Jazz Festival has kind of gotten to be one of the big events in town. People have come to regard it that way, and so people who like to show up at concerts, no matter what they are, will show up for ours too, just because of that. It is, you know, it's kind of a happening thing, so everybody wants to kind of be in on the action.
It's a great festival. It's one of the biggest ones on the West Coast. We do a great job of getting a variety of artists to come out and play with the bands. It's as a musician, it's pretty cool to be able to play with people who have had a really, big recording careers and performance careers. Some of them even have been awarded Lifetime Achievement Awards by the National Endowment for the Arts. So being exposed to people like that is really really benefits us as music education majors, future teachers, as well as future performers and developing musicians.
It's just a great event. It's very education based. It's very both education and performance oriented, I should say. But my favorite part about it is the adjudication process, the way it's set up, where the bands get to play for a full half hour for a professional jazz musician, and then have them work with them for a full half hour. And the adjudicators were really great, and they really made a huge impact. And just that half hour they had, they really made the most out of it, and it was really great. And I think that's a big difference here compared to other jazz festivals I've seen. They just don't have as much time to work with the groups, which was fantastic.
1, 2, everybody. Good. That's how you feel jazz.
My name's Chris Brie. I'm from Central Washington University in Ellensburg, Washington. It's great to be in Montana and hear all these Montana bands.
He's very energetic, very passionate about jazz, and his depth of knowledge is very, very deep, and he connects with jazz literature on a very personal level. So working with him is always like a good kick in the pants because he's just so motivating and so demanding of you, and I have a lot of respect for him for that.
They're both people who are involved in teaching jazz at the college level, but still they're teaching. They're jazz educators, and that's the reason they're here.
So when the bass is going boom, 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 that's what your motor is doing, your rhythmic motor. Okay? So I want you to feel that and play the melody. Let's see.
I mean, look at the music. I'm going, look at every note is accented, and I don't hear that. Okay, here we go. Top. 1, 2.
Buddha, 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 Buddha. Does that sound more like jazz? Yeah. Buddha.
The stress is on half note, not on. And then the kick drum thing you're doing is cool.
Buddha, 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 Buddha. Okay?
I rest my case. What do you think? Is that better?
Much better.
See, you're already playing the notes and the rhythm's in the right place. And if you guys play more full, they're not going to have to go, oh, come on, play this soft. See what I mean?
Marlene Rosenberg,
Hi.
Chuck Florence,
Hi, Chuck.
Chris Broya,
Marlena?
Chris?
Marlene,
Chuck.
Marlene. Chris.
Chris. Yeah, this is not Marlene.
Yeah.
This is Chris. He's been the pivot man for 3 years. We just changed the format 3 years ago. We used to do the performance and the clinic on stage so that people could listen to what the adjudicators had to say. But we decided to change that for a couple of reasons, one of which it didn't give the clinicians or the bands enough time to really have much of a clinic. Everything gets jammed into a half an hour. So we now allow the band to play for that half-hour period and then go to another site to get the clinician part. The upside of that is the clinician can work directly with the band and be more candid.
Sometimes clinicians really are great teachers, and they touch students. This cat from Central Washington, Bria, well, he's a great teacher, so he made connections with my students right away.
So, have you heard the original version of this? What are the words? So, do you think they're going, ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no, is that the way they sing it? That's the way you're playing it, though. So what can you do to make it sound like it has some expression?
Swing it.
Not swing it, but say that, what was that word? You said articulation, that's exactly, so it's marked there, right? D, 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 da, do, da. Let's all say that just the way I did it. 1, 2, 3. Da, 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 di, da, do, da.
In his comments, or her comments, and less guarded, because when you're standing there with a microphone and there are 100 people sitting out in the audience and you want to tell the band that they really don't sound very good in whatever terms you choose to use, that they really have problems, that's embarrassing. It's very difficult to do that for the clinician and for the band that's sitting there. If the guy's telling them, well, you know, you really kind of sucked.
It sounds like you're aiming, you're going, you're aiming there. Aim it there.
think about what that might mean. I don't know.
From watching the adjudicators, they will learn a little bit what their own weaknesses are. Any educator have things they're good at and things that there are weaknesses or that they're not even aware of. And a lot of times they will prepare their bands to the best of their ability, and then the adjudicator might talk about something a little bit different. That's an obvious weakness of the group. And in that half hour, the group will sound better because they've learned something that they maybe haven't heard before.
Go. That's a different volume than you played in the context of the chart. What's the deal? Are you saving it for something? You're saving it. Well, you know, there's something to that. As a brass player myself, you got to watch how much you let go, because there are only so many notes in your face before you can't play anymore.
Optimum number, you can, I mean, if they're outstanding soloists, we can have 3, we can have 1, we can have none. We can have,
Per group. Is that what you mean?
no,
Total?
I'm saying for the whole festival. I mean, we can have maybe, you know, we can have as many as deserve it, and that could be 10, that could be 5, or whatever. It's really up to you.
Jazz started as something that was very intuitive, and everybody played by ear, and nobody really thought about the structure of it on a very conscious level. But then as we got further and further into the history of jazz, and the styles got more complex, and the approach got more involved, it began to become a more formalized kind of music. And so people like myself and Chris Broya, Marlene Rosenberg, are teachers.
What's the second chord?
C.
Just a C?
And it's half E flat, half C in the first minute.
Oh, right. I know this. I mean, it's not like I don't know this tune,
Yeah.
but yeah. And it just says C, huh?
C7, sorry.
Thank you. The next one?
F with a little dash.
F with a little dash.
I think that just means F, but I'm not sure.
It actually means minor.
Like a minus sign.
Yep. Does it have a 7?
Nope.
No, but it means it. It's a great language, isn't it? It's a lot of nuances you can't see. And you're just supposed to know. I don't know how that is, but that's why I'm here.
What did you learn from that?
Play out.
Yeah, play out. How about the, blowing in the tube only? Did that help at all?
Just the feeling.
Yeah, you were playing. When I was teaching lessons a long time ago, I had this one student that it was the hardest thing. I could never get him to play. He would wind up just to play in the middle of the step. He'd go, and I call it the weightlifter syndrome. Like all of you people have probably bench pressed before, right? And you got to go. If you don't hold the air in, then you go, right? So what this guy was doing is he was doing that and holding in the air, but pushing so hard, and it was just a bizarre thing. I could never get this guy to play without doing that. It's weird, weightlifter syndrome. So if you play open and free, the tension is from here down. Everything above here is no tension except for the corners. Then you'll sound awesome. Okay.
Our adjudicator really actually played some of our songs with us to illustrate some of the points that he wanted to make about the music, which I always welcome, because well, aside from being adjudicators, most of the people we get are great players in their own rights.
Oh no. Hey, how are you?
How you doing?
Good. How are you, Chris?
Good.
Good to see you.
Hey,
you? How are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
I know, it's been forever.
Cool. doing some work,
Shirts?
huh?
Oh, yes.
Cool, good to see you.
Yeah, you too. I thought he might know you somehow.
Yeah. For the record, I do know Jordan. Hey guys, go ahead and get out and warm up, please. Hey, listen, so get your instruments out and assemble them, and then we're going to go up to a warm-up room, okay?
Don't just forget our record.
Terell Stafford plays with the John Clayton Orchestra and major player in both LA and New York.
Jazz is very much a language that has to be learned. Like any other language, Spanish or English or whatever, if you studied a lot of Shakespeare, you would probably be quite good at both speaking and writing in English. If you have never spoken English before and you say, I'm just going to wing it, I'm just going to improvise, but you don't know any English and you don't know the grammar of English, your odds of sounding like you're speaking English is pretty limited.
Amazing experience playing with these, the top names in jazz, and with Clipper and David, all these years, it keeps me on my toes, and since jazz is not common around here in terms of gigs, it's been great to have the opportunity to play with all these great players for all these years, and it's not some kind of dream world or something. It's reality. You're right there. They're right on the stage there, and the kids get to work, directly with the guys in Jazz One get to work directly with the player, and it's pretty quick. In and out. They're here, rehearsal, clinic, concert, gone. They're gone, but it's still been awesome.
The Jazz Festival has kind of gotten to be one of the big events in town. People have come to regard it that way, and so people who like to show up at concerts, no matter what they are, will show up for ours too, just because of that. It is, it's kind of a happening thing, so everybody wants to kind of be in on the action.
you see an artist or a musician, they're not just hearing what's going on in the ensemble, but they're keeping track of what the bass is doing, and they're keeping track of what the drum set's playing. They kind of pick up on things that those musicians do and they understand what's going on from those players, so they can be influenced by them, and they don't, it's not like the drum set player plays something and it just kind of generally seeps in and kind of slips out the other side. They are free mentally to exchange ideas and to pick up on things and to try to influence those musicians back.
I started playing jazz late. I was in the middle of graduate school, and I was completing my graduate degree in classical trumpet. And I happened to be practicing Let the Bright Seraphim on piccolo trumpet to do on a faculty recital with one of the faculty vocalists. And the way that I got hooked into it was that I started to play the tune, bum 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 bum, and there were a lot of ornaments in the tune, and the vocalist would throw a lot of ornaments at me, and I couldn't figure out how to play them. So what I figured I'd do is when I practice the piece, I practice it with as many ornaments as possible to prepare me for it. And so I'd go bum 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 bum, and there was a guy next door in the practice room that was practicing saxophone. And when I do that, he'd go boop bop boo biddy boo biddy boo biddy boo biddy. So I said okay. So I went. And he went, I was like, that's it! So I knocked on the practice room door and I said, man, are you making fun of what I'm playing? He said, no, I'm getting inspired by the sounds I hear. And so when he said he's inspired by the sounds that he hear, I was really encouraged to go out and find recordings and be inspired by every recording I listened to, learn the recordings. And the more I learned the recordings, the more I would learn other people's vocabulary. Because I was always taught it's better to sound like someone than no one.
Terell Stafford's a fantastic trumpet player and flugelhornist. What I got from him was he was very humble and a very approachable, real kind of person, even though his skills are just unbelievable. You can tell he's really put a lot of practice into his instrument, because he said that he started jazz very late, which is the way a lot of people do it. I didn't play in, my high school didn't have a jazz band, so I didn't play in any sort of jazz ensemble until I was 21 probably. So to hear a guy who's on that level say he didn't start jazz until he was 21 also.
I'm very shy, as you can tell. But I've been a person, because of my experience in life, that I had to come out of my shyness and begin to ask questions. Because when I moved to New York, people were so incredibly brutal in their comments. And they would be brutal without explanation. And when people are brutal without explanation, that makes you ask questions. So I started asking tons of questions to everyone I could find. Questions about how do I use my air better? Questions about what can I play over a dominant flat 9 chord? Questions about how do I play in the upper register? Questions about how do I get gigs? Questions about how do I play duo with the piano? Where did you find the best slice of pizza in New York? Things like that. When you moved to New York, where do you find the best slice of pizza? That's right. Where do you find? Well, that's Chicago too. New York is. Where do you find the safest street to walk?
Being a trumpet player, I played with a trumpet player, so I find it really fun, and I found him so, especially in the rehearsal we had with him, he was so educational and so oriented in the music that it wasn't just about playing a couple songs with him on stage at night. It's about teaching the music and getting a feel and having fun together. So it was just like, he was just pouring out ideas, and it was this constant cycle of give and take, and it was just so much fun, and I'm really excited to play with him during the final concert.
Shelly and Terell were just really fantastic guys. I mean, they were just fun to be around, and it was really pleasant to see guys that you know, are not too full of themselves, because that can happen. Sometimes you'll run into people that don't have any time to stop and talk to you about anything, or just to be nice.
When you start to play them, you start to play them though, in your own way. There's no way I can sound like Clifford Brown or Freddie Hubbard or Miles Davis or Dizzy Gillespie, but I can sound like me, and my voice started to come through this other vocabulary. So to get your own voice, make sure you saturate yourself in the music. Make a pot of stew. You know, in a great pot of stew, you throw everything in there. You can throw anything in a pot. You can put a sneaker in a pot of stew, and it'll taste good, you know, because of all the other flavors. Right? Don't try that. But really, you can throw anything in a pot of stew and make it taste good. And that's what we should be as jazz musicians, a pot of stew, acquiring as much vocabulary as possible.
He studied classical trumpet up to that point, and then somebody said, we should play more jazz. Yeah, try it, give it a whirl. And so he did, and well, you know the rest.
The first place we were going to go was to Germany. I'd never been to Germany. I was going to play this music. And on the plane ride, I was so excited, flying over, and I was writing this letter to my grandmother, just thanking her for everything, and I planned to mail it when I got to Germany. Well, when I got to Germany, I got a phone call at the hotel. My parents informed me that she passed away while I was flying over to Germany. So instead of writing this letter to her, I turned the letter into a composition, and this is entitled, Dear Rudy.
Fourth artist, Terell Stafford, was picked and contacted by our new faculty member, Johan Eriksson.
One of my favorite trumpet players, jazz musicians. He's played with basically everybody. He was a member of the Village Vanguard band in New York, which is a continuation of the Mel Lewis, Thad Jones big band. Really long history. He works quite a bit with a saxophone player named Dick Oates, who's one of the best saxophone players in the world. Yeah, just a great musician and one of the nicest people in jazz.
I was actually sitting in New York with a pianist named Kenny Barron, and he was my teacher in college. And Kenny Barron, when he knew I played classical music and I wanted to play jazz, he would give me little assignments to listen to. He'd tell me to go listen to Miles and Clifford and Dizzy, and list on and on and on. Well, I did that, and I learned a lot of those solos, and I was playing in this club called Bradley's with Kenny Barron. And right after I finished playing, a gentleman by the name of Stanley Crouch, who's a jazz critic, comes up to me and he goes, your playing has no foundation or depth. And I was crushed. I was like, oh, really? And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, well, have you listened to Roy Eldridge? I said, no. He goes, have you listened to Bubba Riley? I said, no. He goes, have you listened much to Louis Armstrong? I said, no. And he named all these trumpet players that I'd never listened to. And he goes, I hear you playing everything modern, but your playing doesn't have the foundation. And when he said that, I got really upset and I got really defensive and I got really angry because of ego, you know, and because of that, I didn't listen to what he said. I went home and I pouted. And then 2 days later, ironically, a trumpet player by the name of John Faddis called me and he goes, I need you to come sub, and we're doing a gig with the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, and Wendell's going to be conducting. So I said, great. So I go to this rehearsal, and I walk into the rehearsal, and they had a chart on the stand that said Black and Tan Fantasy. And the chart said to growl. And I was like, growl? What does that mean? I guess I'll just flutter tongue. That's it. So I started to play this part, and I started to flutter tongue. After I got 2 bars, Wendell's like, what are you doing, man? That doesn't say flutter tongue. It says to growl. Do you know how to growl? I said, no, I don't think so. He goes, have you heard of Bubba Miley? I said, oh no, not this again. Sick of this. And he went through the same list. And I had to say no, no, no. And he goes, well, if you don't know these people by tomorrow's rehearsal, don't come back. And so I went out that night and I found records by everyone. And I learned how to growl. And I learned how to use a plunger. And that's part of the trumpet history.
Terell is an exciting player. He brought that he brought that in the moment he started working with us. Started talking about the hump, which it kind of reminded me a little bit of an Austin Powers Mojo kind of deal. He said the players that bring some urgency into their music and into their playing and have that constant forward motion in their playing, those are the players who have the hump, is what Terell said, and he said, gave us a lot of great advice for later in our future careers. Said those players that have the hump, they're the ones that get the call. They're the ones that get the call for the gig, and I hope everyone took that to heart. I feel like he brought that out in us as well when playing. He certainly got it.
I was on the road with him, and it was Ray Brown. And I said, Mr. Brown, you've played with so many great people. Who've been some of your favorites? He goes, you know what? The list could go on and on, but let me sum it up like this. There's 2 types of musicians, and there's only one type I like to play with. There's the selfish musician, and it's all about me, 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 me. And there's the selfless musician, and they're always the ones that are giving, giving, giving. And if we become that selfish musician, then yeah, we'll think about the melody, but we'll also think about what's being fed to us. The rhythm section is constantly feeding rhythms, they're constantly feeding harmonies, they're constantly feeding phrases. So, to combine the melody and listen to think about that, and then also open up our ears to what's being fed to us, you can form the perfect solo. And as far as perfect solos.
Please welcome to the stage Mr. Shelly Berg.
Do you have reverb on in the PA? Wow, that's the room, huh? Can we hang some big drapes in here before tonight? Before I speak, do you have any comments? Anybody have any comments on what you heard? Remember, no rehearsal. I just named a tune, said, hello, my name is Shelly. My favorite color is blue, or something like that, and then we started. Any thoughts that anybody has about that? Why, thank you, Mom. Thank you. We hoped it would sound good.
Shelly Berg's approach was different. He kind of exudes the music more. It's not so much of the music coming out of him as much as it is him getting into the music. And I think his approach was, I think he has a perfect pitch. So going through, like, this is a chord. I think the question that struck me the most was how do you shape a solo? And he was very clear in his vision that to shape a solo, you're all about getting into the chords, and you feel like this is where the chorus goes, and then this is where these verses go, and what the chord progressions kind of tell you to do. And I think that was an interesting insight as far as the way his brain works while he plays.
And before we start, I want you to know that I just met Clipper and Bob a minute and a half ago. Never performed together, we don't know each other, and so I want you to think about this as we play this song. I did tell him what the song's going to be.
himself in the music. And that's what a good performance will have, that kind of, you'll just completely immerse yourself in the music, and then the music is what's most important at that point. We're just a servant to the music, something like that.
Okay, all those things and more. Obviously, we're playing a tune that we all know, so we know the melody, we know the chord changes, but we know a lot more than that. We know what the song is about. Every piece of music is about something unique. That song was called Like Someone in Love. Sometimes the lyric is like, sometimes I find myself out gazing at stars, hearing guitars like someone in love. Sometimes the things I do astound me, especially whenever you're around me. Sometimes I feel myself as if I had wings, bumping into things like someone in love. So you get the idea of the song, someone is in love, and they're just falling in love, and they realize, gee, I think I'm falling in love because I'm gazing at stars and hearing guitars when I think about you. So it's this beautiful song at the moment of feeling that you're falling in love. Well, we all know that. We know what this song is about. So the first thing is we have a common idea about it. It's not just a set of chords and notes, but it's an expression of something. So we know that, we know the song, we know what it's about. We probably know how other people have played it in the past, so we have that as our common background about it. And then something very important has to happen. We have to listen to each other. One of my favorite words for a rhythm section after groove is deference. Deferring to somebody else, leaving a little space for somebody else to play something that will inspire you. And I was definitely inspired by what these two gentlemen were playing, and I think, even in the very first part of the tune, Clipper and I played some figure together as if we'd rehearsed it, and it was within the first 8 bars. So it's more than listening. You get so, immediately you start to just open yourself up to the other people, and it becomes almost telepathic, doesn't it? And again, if you play it enough, there are things that are likely to happen, and so that makes those things more likely to happen. So I want you to realize, whether you're playing the second tenor part in a big band or playing a solo, that there's a lot that the song tells you about itself.
Shelly Berg. He is a pianist. He's also the dean of the School of Music in Miami, so University of Miami, which is one of the biggest jazz schools in the country. He's just a great musician in every way. Great ear, unbelievable time, just so rooted in the tradition of jazz. And he has an ability of making the band sound better.
Yeah. Shoot the guitars, just kidding.
He's really, really skilled at doing that. He's clearly someone who has spent a long time being a clinician, directing bands, and not just on the himself performing end of it. He was really able to work so quickly and effectively with our band to get us sounding like what he wanted to.
There are artists that might want to do visual art by taking buckets of paint and throwing it on a canvas, right? Or roller skating across a canvas. That could be valid. But here's the thing to me. If I want to be an artist, I'm going to study anatomy. Can I draw the human hand? I'm going to study still life. Can I draw a bowl of fruit? I'm going to study landscape. I'm going to study perspective. I'm going to study how do you make light and color. How do you make it look like there's a light shining on something as an artist? And then, if I want to take buckets and throw paint on the wall, it's going to be different. Because it's going to be informed by all that stuff I learned. And if you don't learn all that stuff, it's just throwing buckets of paint on the wall. But if you do, you're going to throw those buckets of paint differently. So if you want to play like Cecil Taylor, that's fine. But better learn how to play like Fats Waller first. Because that's the lineage that led up to Cecil Taylor. So that's my thought.
Piano. I'd heard him at a jazz party in Denver 4 years ago. I loved his playing, and I love it even more now since he's been here.
So if Terell's playing what is this thing called love, and at first I'm just going, nothing's kind of happening, but then I start to see what he's doing, then I might want to wind up that rubber band. As soon as I do that, he's flying, right? Stay up there. Now I start another one. Some of that, see it worked. Some of that is just is doing little things like that help kind of create the tension and release. Get something going. Now it's flying a little bit. Oh no, well that was an 8-bar phrase.
He has played with with Bill Watrous. Played with him for a long time with Bill Watrous, and his big band has actually played with a lot of bands. Because he's such a great player. He's just a phenomenal player.
Music is very implicit. If it wasn't implicit, Mozart would have written this. Because he would have to just tell you the chords and the rhythm and the melody all the time. But he could go. And you hear the whole thing. So when we're a rhythm section, we have to remember that if there's 15 horns playing something, there's probably not a lot I can add. If there's 50 horns playing, I do this a lot. Or I try to accentuate or get inside what they're doing. Because so much of music's implicit anyway, there's not a lot that I can add. So, just developing an intuition for this. I often say that if I was Frank Sinatra's piano player, I wouldn't have gotten a gig like this. Those fingers through my hair, that's like a little stare. You know, I would go, those fingers in my hair, it's like come hear the stare, rips my conscience bare. Try to play in the holes, try to accentuate what's there, and get out of the way, because music's implicit. This next one, the arrangement was written by a former student of mine, and it's just one of the most beautiful songs ever. It's written by the great Horace Silver, and it's simply entitled Peace. But it's really sort of a prayer for peace. You can really hear that in the song, and I don't think that's ever something that's far from anybody's mind. It's as relevant today as it was when Horace Silver wrote it. more than 40 years ago. So this is an arrangement by the wonderful young composer-arranger Jason Goldman of Horace Silver's Peace.
I just think that Buddy Defranco is an incredible, incredible musician. Oh, has been for far longer than I've been alive.
That since he's been here now 11 times, people have sort of embraced him as, you know, their own. You know, now he's Buddy Defranco from Missoula, Montana, you know, for 2 days. And I do think people react that way. I mean, he returns, people expect him to come back, and they show up to be a part of it.
It kind of blows me away. But what blows me away even more is it's been 11 years as the Buddy Defranco Jazz Festival. And it's been an honor for us, a privilege to work with a man who jazz history will write up, no doubt, as one of the true legends in the history of jazz. Please welcome Mr. Buddy Defranco.
To Terell Stafford and Shelly Berg, and they were intimidated playing with him. I mean, here's some of the best jazz musicians in the world, and Shelly Berg was saying the whole time when I was playing with him, I was trying to forget that he recorded with Art Tatum and that he recorded with Oscar Peterson. He's like, you know, there's nothing that I can do on the piano that he hasn't heard before, done much better than what I could do, and this is coming from one of the best jazz pianists, you know, in the world.
I mean, I've played with him for 11 years, but it's just always a gig. You know, it's kind of, how you doing? You know, yeah, good to see you again. And you don't really get to know him very well, but there's no mistake. I mean, it's no accident that he's a great player as he is, because he practices all the time. That's, you know, I guess I could say that, you know, to anyone who wants to know why he's so good, or how he stays so good, is because he practices all the time. You know, to any aspiring professional musician out there, then that's a lesson right there. I mean, if it's a chore to practice, then you're probably not in the right field. If you want to play your instrument all the time like he does, then then you can achieve great things.
I knew that was going to happen.
Lance. He's really great. I mean, he makes you work so hard because you want so much to do well, because he expects so much of you, but he also, it really means a lot whenever he says like good job or nice things. Like, that really means a lot more, and you know that you really have done a good job.
We fly fish together, you know, so anyway, we're good friends and good great colleague to have.
He's very gentle and he cares a lot, and I think that's not what you hear about him at first, but I think it's pretty clear to anybody who knows him that he's very gentle and very nurturing on the inside, and I think that's a really important part of him as a person, and I think that his students benefit from that, and I think the university benefits from that.
Nope, I was perfectly content just to kind of amuse myself. But my mother had this notion. There was a fellow who was in my hometown who she said made the trombone talk, which is her way of saying that he was really a good player, and really caught her ear and really made her interested in the trombone. So she thought, well, one of my kids needs to play trombone.
First time I met Lance was in my interview in 1990. When I interviewed for the job. It was in June. I remember school was already out. There were no students around. And I thought for sure he didn't like me, you know, because look, you know, he has this face, you know, these facial expressions. A lot of people feel that way.
He's a lion. He's a lion, and if I were to look at Lance and as a boxer, I would say he's got a few title fights left in him. No problem.
No hopes for somebody coming in doing Lance's job. There will be nobody that I can think of that can come in and teach the low brass studio, euphonium, tuba, and trombone, be the jazz director, and run a full-time jazz festival. Whoever comes in will stay for 1 year, and then they will say, no way, I'm doing this anymore, and they will be gone. So I can't answer that question. I'm sure it will continue, but how it will be run will be definitely, that will probably have to change, because nobody can do what Lance is doing.
It was great. What did you guys think of it?
It was pretty awesome. Yeah. Explosive is the word I'd use to describe it.
We had a good time.
Jazz could be one chord, or it could be 50 chords within a span of 30 seconds. And it wouldn't make a difference. It would still be jazz. The other misconception about jazz that I run into all the time is the concept of improvisation. And the term itself is somewhat misleading. Improvisation implies that you're just making something up on the spot, right? That much is true, but the dedication and the art of making something up on the spot takes thousands and thousands and thousands of hours in order to make that sound good.
From my standpoint, probably a lot of people would expect to hear the Buddy Defrancos, the Lee Konitses, the Benny Golsons, the artists that have grown up in the jazz tradition and who are probably what you might call the old guard. That jazz is kind of an old, outdated style, maybe, is part of that. But in fact, you've got Grace Kelly standing up there and playing jazz. She's 17 years old. For young people, I think they're so caught up in the pop culture that that's all they're interested in spending their money on, and the pop concerts that are around, and there are plenty of them, are the ones they go to, and let the old people go to the jazz concerts. Well, I think that's sort of breaking down.
The power of music, it almost has a spiritual power for great musicians. When they start playing music, it's like their whole, nothing else matters anymore. All, like getting old doesn't matter anymore. You know, your pains in your body, or you know, that this year with Buddy and Lee Konitz both cracking jokes about, you know, take my advice, don't get old, or, you know, stuff like that, and talking about how hard it is, you know, dealing with that. But when they start playing, it doesn't matter anymore. And also, I guess it's ageless, the ageless aspect of playing music. It doesn't matter what age you are. Music is music, and, you know, it takes you to another world, kind of, or frees you from your worries.
I hadn't really known much about her, so went to this concert and listened to her play the saxophone, sing, and talk to the audience in a way that was just stunning. She's way above beyond her years in terms of her musical and maturity in general. And I'd like to have you meet her and listen to her perform tonight. Please welcome Grace Kelly. The other two were Lee Konitz and Grace Kelly, and they were really being selected as a pair because Grace and Lee Konitz have recorded together. He kind of takes, or she gives him credit for a lot of what she knows about jazz, and they are, he's sort of her mentor. So it was kind of natural to bring him in along with Grace.
She's basically a jazz prodigy. I mean, she's 17 years old now. Started recording when she was 12. I don't know how many CDs she's put out at this point. Her mentors include Lee Konitz, who was here, Phil Woods. She studies with Greg Osby at Berkeley College of Music in Boston.
I actually started playing saxophone because of, I love the sound of Stan Getz. I guess he was the first saxophonist that my mom was playing a lot of him when I was younger, and I just really loved his sound. It was beautiful, beautiful sound. So
There's a bunch of nice guys.
you know, I was inspired to pick up the saxophone, and but I listened to a lot of different people with many different styles, and I mean Stan Getz, and then I started listening to Johnny Hodges and Charlie Parker, and then when I first listened to Lee Konantz's music, I was so fascinated, but I didn't quite, I mean, I was so fascinated, but it was so different from anything I had heard before, which is the reason why I was so gravitated toward it.
If there is such a thing as a prodigy in jazz, she would be it.
She also, like, she plays piano, she
sings,
yeah,
composes.
Wow.
I think she even plays little drums. So I hear.
Wow.
So yeah, she's quite amazing.
Yeah.
Matt Wilson is playing drums.
Great.
Rufus Reed is playing bass.
Great.
Russell Malone is playing guitar.
Great.
I believe that was 3 greats. And then, you know, Lee Konantz, just, 5 greats exactly.
But because this was the first thing we did together, and I'm much older than Grace, I told her that she has back vision to play better than me, and she did. Sometimes she did, so what do you do?
Grace Kelly is how can she not be a huge hit everywhere she goes? She's an incredibly talented, shockingly young, vibrant new player.
We're gonna do a song, one of my favorite songs. I actually recorded this one, and I think it's appropriate. We need a little bit more spring. Don't you agree? Restless as a willow in a windstorm. I'm as jumpy as a puppet on a string. I'd say that I have spring fever, but I know it isn't spring. Starry-eyed and vaguely discontented. Ooh, like a nightingale without his song to sing.
She's already ridiculously good, and I can't wait to hear her 10 years from now or 15 years from now. I mean, at the rate that she's progressing, she's already at such a high level, but she was here 5 months ago and she sounded better now than she did 5 months ago, and she was sounding really good then, and it's just scary. It's scary how good she is. And then she sings really well. She plays saxophone really well. I mean, she's just one of those people.
I met her when she was 13, and she was playing impressively then, but like a 13-year-old, a very talented 13-year-old. In fact, she gave me 3 of her CDs. I didn't make no CDs when I was 13.
Well, of course, Grace Kelly is his, young apprentice, and she's, amazing, new, talented young player, and I wish her all the best, with her career.
Grace Kelly left an email and said she had such a great time playing with the band, and just people, the artists anyway, have go away, I think, with a very good feeling about Missoula and what's happening here. Feedback from community people, when they see me on the street, a lot of people stop me and say how much they enjoyed it. I've had 2 or 3 of those already this year, which is a little more than usual, but I think each year we start to, we get more people in and more people know what's going on, and they just want to let you know they appreciate it.
I was actually going to bring this to a close, but before we do close it, I want to pass along something that Lee said in rehearsal today. It really rang a bell in my head. You know how you walk up to a note that you're trying to start, and you're trying to get your band to play together and then be in tune and all those things you're trying to achieve. When you do that, we have at the beginning of an arrangement we're doing Starlight, Stella by Starlight, just a unison. The whole band plays a unison note and it starts very softly. And we almost invariably will have to take 2 or 3 tries at it before everybody gets it together. And Lee said, play it like it's already there. And I think that idea really gets at that issue. Can you explain that?
Well, Bill Frisell is the inspiration for that. He always sounds like a note that he played exists already. It doesn't attack on that. Anybody know Bill Frisell? So you know what I'm talking about. That's all I have to say. Saxophone for a hell of a long time. And I must tell you honestly that there's no end to playing the saxophone better, so I just keep trying. Isn't that nice? But she can do things that I can't do now. We made a record together some years ago, and it got 4.5 stars in downbeat. I never got 4.5 stars in downbeat. For her, I got 4.5 stars.
It's a special record. I love it.
Well, it was a great rhythm section, and in this music, having a great rhythm section is very essential to inspiring us to play better. Miles Davis knew that from the beginning. He always had great rhythm sections. One time, Gil Evans and I had some duo concerts, and Gil told Miles that we were going to do a duo. Miles said, no rhythm section.
Well, Lee Konitz is a giant, jazz giant, just like Buddy Defranco is. And of course he was, he was kind of the, at a time when Charlie Parker was playing thousands of notes in the bebops. style of jazz. Lee Konitz was developing a completely different style.
Yes, he was one of the leaders in the cool jazz movement in the 1950s. He played with people like Lenny Tristano and Warren Marsh and all the people that are really connected to the cool jazz movement. He was part of the birth of the Cool album that Miles Davis put together, along with people like Jerry Mulligan. I mean, it's just, again, it's one of those moments that every jazz history book has a chapter dedicated to birth of the cool, and here's a guy that you can sit down and talk to and say, oh, what was that session like?
In the 40s, and you didn't hear the recording, the famous recording called Birth of the Cool by Gil Evans, famous jazz composer. And featuring on that album, jazz legends like Miles Davis, Jerry Mulligan, and Lee Konitz. You never imagined you'd be up on the stage like I am right now, introducing one of those legendary figures. So here I am saying, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Lee Konitz.
Now we bring you back 60 years. A little nostalgia, and we play a piece that I recorded with the Miles Davis Nonet, which has been enlarged to a big band. And on this piece, I actually didn't play a solo on the record, so you can hear a solo on this for the first time. This is my part. Okay. Our next tune. That's a hard act to follow, you know what I'm saying?
Kind of like Lee Konitz, just left a message on my phone last night, thanking me for a wonderful experience, thanking for playing with the band and for meeting everybody here. And
To this day, I'm still trying to put together everything that I learned from even just being near Lee Konitz. He was just right there in the very present moment, and one of the things that I feel any musician should learn and can learn from Lee Konitz is to be in that very present moment.
right there? Yeah. Okay. Very happy to be here today.
It was funny when Lee came off stage after he performed. His only comment was, "Man, it is so hard to find the right notes." That's what he said, you know? And a guy that's just striving, he's around 80 years old, and he's just striving for that perfection, you know? Finding the right notes all the time. And this is after having played his entire life, and he's still just trying to go for that sound that he wants. It's pretty inspiring.
And so Lee Konitz recorded with Miles Davis back in 1949 on one of the most famous recordings ever put out, jazz recording, compositions of Jill Evans. He is what you would call a pioneer of the so-called cool jazz era, which was a reactionary period to bebop, which is just the opposite style-wise. Cool jazz was very laid back, very mellow, very sort of calm, very pastoral, I should say pastoral colors in the sounds. You know, just everything is just very moody. And so he kind of was one of the leading figures in that period, and then he's gone on to sort of perpetuate that style of playing, which is what he did here.
Complained about my guitar being too shiny. He said that my guitar blinded him, and so I took one of our jazz festival programs. I cut it out with the logo and put it on the part of my guitar that Lee Konitz said was too shiny and was blinding him, and I scotch taped it there so that it wouldn't blind him. If Lee Konitz asked me to bring him some ice cream and shine his shoes, I would have done that too.
And Buddy wanted to end with a fast tune, because that's what you do. You always end with a, toe tapping, fast flying last tune. And Lee doesn't want to do that. I mean, he didn't want. I don't play fast tunes, he said. So there was some clashing there, but they handled it really well. And then, he did it anyway. I mean, Lee still played on that tune and stuff.
In 1998, this festival was in the Wilma Theater because they were renovating the theater. And after the concert, the last concert, like this one, on that festival, Joyce DeFranco and Mike Stockland, a friend of the DeFrancos, came up to me right afterwards and said, well, how would you like to have Buddy Defranco collaborate with you on a permanent basis? And I said, well, of course, who wouldn't want that? And then I thought, well, to myself, well, sure, everybody's excited, great concert, blah, blah, blah. So I sort of forgot about it, and 2 weeks later I get a phone call. And yeah, they were serious. They really wanted to collaborate and make this into what it is. So here we are in our 11th year with Buddy heading up this whole affair. So we're proud to have him a part of this festival, and proud to have a pleasure to perform with him and to present him every year. So if you would please welcome Buddy Defranco.
Him and his wife, Joyce, had gone through a whole day of travel. I think they started at 10 o'clock on Saturday. He's almost 90 years old, He's had a lot of pretty substantial medical happenings, or you know, a deep history in the last couple of years medically. So everybody was always just kind of just worried, like, how's Buddy going to be doing this year? I don't know. But after a long day of travel, including almost missing their connection in Salt Lake City, they showed up just in great spirits. Buddy was walking around fine, like a spring chicken.
You know, and then being able to watch Buddy Defranco get up there every year and still at his age, you know, still be able to play as amazingly as he does. And it's always been really neat to watch the other artists, no matter who they are. I mean, when they're on the stage with Buddy Defranco, they feel like they're in the state, you know, they're in the presence of greatness, even though they're great themselves. It just, and the result brings out the best in all the players that get up and play, you know, alongside Buddy Defranco.
He's gotten a number of awards for who he is and what he has accomplished. And so he probably performs on a national level 2 or 3 times a year. I say national, I mean it would be like a major convention or a major gathering of some kind. And then I think he occasionally, not so much last year because his health has been very, very fragile this last year, but I think
He just played 2 concerts. We're done at 11. The jam session starts around 11:30, and there's Buddy, you know, just hanging out with all the musicians, and I thought that was a great success too. All the guest artists showed up for the jam session, and after having played for 3 hours, they just come out and they play for another 2. So just that kind of dedication, and Buddy's definitely, he embodies that kind of lifestyle and that kind of dedication to his craft.
Post-Buddy. Well, I have already had conversations with both Joyce and Buddy about that. We came very close to doing that this year. He was hospitalized 3 times and almost died one of those times. So there is that real possibility that it would change, and probably will change, if not now, certainly in time. So what do we do after he no longer can be on stage? And I think we can continue producing the Buddy Defranco Jazz Festival, just like they do with the Lionel Hampton in Moscow, Idaho. He just wouldn't be a part of it. And we would, certainly honor his name, and we would continue to invite in artists and conduct a similar format to the way it's been, all along, and try to keep things going, keep the tradition going.